Say this phrase out loud. Did you say, how can you say that? How can you say that? Probably you used a little bit more linking and reductions to sound a little bit more natural. If we say English sentences word by word, it's going to sound robotic, it's going to sound choppy. And the difference between how we write the words or how we pronounce each of these words when we're just saying the words by themselves is very different than how we say it in fluent speaking. So rather than how can you say that, I'm going to say, how can you say that? How can you say that? How is that different than each of these words? Let's break it down and show you the linking and reductions so you can say this and many other phrases naturally. So first of all, when we look at how to break down and how to be fluent on a sentence, we need to know where the stress patterns lie. So in the sentence, how can you say that? Say is our stressed word. It's not going to have any reductions and it's going to have a clear vowel. It's going to be held longer. To get the rhythm of how can you say that, say is going to get our beat, and how can you and that are all going to be quick. So that's where our reductions and linking can happen. When I say how can you, what I'm doing there is my vowel a. When I say can by itself or I can, I use a clear vowel. But when I say how can or I can, it becomes more just a k and an n sound. How can, how can. So my how is the same vowel, a little bit fast, how can you. And then for the you, how can you say that? I often will use the true oo sound, but it'll be quite short rather than how can you. I don't want to lengthen on it. Or sometimes I may also reduce this to more of a schwa vowel. How can you say that? Then my say is nice and stretched out, and my that doesn't change vowel here, but is short. How can you say that? In terms of the rhythm, or in terms of the pitch, that is, because this is a question that has a question word, how, it's not a yes-no question. I'm not saying, did you say that? If I'm saying, did you say that? I would rise on the stressed word say and rise on the word that after. Because it has the question word for how, what, when, where, why questions, we follow the same pattern that we do for statements, which is that we may go up a little bit and on the stressed word, and then we drop and fall off to show the end of the sentence or the end of the question. So in this case, I'm going to say, how can you say that? I'm going to hold this a little bit longer, and then I'm going to fall off on that. So flat pitch, how can you say that? And then a little rise and fall. Or just flat and only a fall. How can you say that? My pitch drops here on the that. So the reason that I'm showing you all of these elements for this pattern, the reductions, the linking, and where I'm stressing, and the pitch patterns, is that I can use this same patterning for many other sentences. So the word say, if I put a blank there instead, I could put in other words here. So for example, how can you do that? How can you mean that? How can you like that? How can you get rid of that? It's all going to have that same intonation pattern. And it's a great way to practice feeling natural with the fast, squished parts of the sentence and the stretched out, stressed part of the sentence. So I highly recommend that. I do have some practice exercises and videos for using this repeated phrase practice for intonation here on the channel. After class, I'll put some notes in the comments and in the description to link to that. And if you have questions or if you'd like more help with that, you can leave comments and questions, and I'll direct you to resources for how to practice that way and how to get these natural fluent sentences, not only for this phrase or iterations of this phrase, but for lots of different things that you're saying in your speech. So welcome everyone. It's nice to see so many of you here this morning. I do love having these Saturday live question and answer classes, so feel free to put your questions in the chat at any time. I'll turn to those now. You can also, if you're watching this later on as a replay, put your questions in the comments. I do respond to comments and give you resources and directions for resources here on the channel, or I might make a video for you specifically for your word or your question. So you can ask about fluent speaking, English pronunciation, whatever is going to be most useful for you. Welcome, nice to see you. We have a question about the word quarry. So this is a great word to ask about because it's also similar to words like quarter, the QUA at the beginning, to know how to pronounce that. Because the QU says the K and the W sounds, when we have the letter W or the W sound with letters AR, like, for example, warm or worn, those letters AR say the OR sounds. And that is also true for letters QUA, QUAR. When we have this AR, it's not quarry or ari. There's no sound you might associate with A there. It's an O sound, quarry. So you can think about it more like as though we had the word wore, like I wore my clothes, and then an E vowel, and we're stressing on that first syllable, quarry. So the old quarry is now a place where people go swimming. Yeah, so similar words, quarter, quarantine. I have a few videos for that here on the channel, and you can also check out this pattern of the W or sounds and how the W sound before R diphthongs changes, the pronunciation of those. Good word, thank you, and nice to see you here this morning. Hi Kumbo, nice to see you, Kumba. And she has a question about wallet. So let's look at the word wallet. We have first syllable stress, and the letters ALL in this word, wallet, it's just the same as when I have the word all. So I'm going to have the ah vowel and the dark L sound, all. And then I can add my w back, all, wall, wallet. There's going to be a schwa for that T, but you can think of it as a little or a little sound. So I would build this from the all, then add your W, all, wall, and then you can think of it just as like a little it sound or a little ut sound, wallet. I think I use more of an I there, but wallet. There's no difference there. For reduced vowels in unstressed syllables, it's going to be somewhere in the I to range. Most important is that it's not a clear vowel, but rather it's a reduced vowel. So please hand me my wallet. Don't forget your wallet. Thank you, that's a good word. I don't think I have a video for that here on the channel yet. Okay, thank you so much for the flower. And we have a question about fulfill and full. So for fulfill, I'm just making sure that fulfill. You hear how when I was writing that, I couldn't remember if it had an L there or not, fulfill. Because often, even though I can say it, fulfill, with this ol sound, that is a place where the L sometimes drops out a little bit. So people might say it more like fulfill. So I'm not sure if I checked the dictionary, it probably has the L sound as an option. And then we stress on the fill syllable, which is why this one has to be quick and it's hard to get that full L in there, fulfill. That even sounds kind of awkward to me to say it with that L. I'm pretty sure I always say it fulfill, which may be incorrect, so I should probably check the dictionary and make sure. But the important part here is that you want to make sure that your fill is long and stretched out. Because that I is high, fill, I'm not really doing much of a dark L there, fill. Yeah, I can fill, do it with a dark L, but I feel like that high front I sound doesn't require a lot of dark L there. And then, yeah, you're going to have a little bit of a schwa sound, f, with an or a little L, fulfill. Yeah, I don't think I used the L there, so could be wrong. And then you also were asking about the word full. So in full, it is more of the dark L. I do have a video for full and pull and bull, words that have the and the ul sound, because that can be a difficult combination for people, full. But I do think that actually when we make the dark L, often we have kind of the sound before it. So it's really helpful to be able to pronounce full and pull and wool, because then when I'm saying things like towel or fool, ool, those all do have that ul vowel sound before the ending. So just think about when you're doing that you have slight lip rounding, but not as tense as an oo sound. The back of the tongue is not as high for the oo, it's a little bit lower, o. I usually finish lifting with this L, lifting behind the teeth. You can do it full o without lifting, but I think it sounds crisper and better for most non-native speakers to actually fully lift and do the full L there. Yeah, so you can get help for, after class I'll put some details linking you to that video about full and pull to see a more extended explanation. Thank you, nice to see you again here this week. Okay, we have, welcome Undead Heart, nice to see you. We have a question about the word eschew. Yes, so for eschew, I have never heard anybody use it with the ch, the ch sound like in chew. So for it does have that in the spelling, eschew. I wonder if that's more of a British pronunciation. After class, I can look it up for you and do a little research on whether or not that's a correct pronunciation. I've always heard it just as issue though, so with the stress on the sh sound. So it sounds kind of like an I and then an sh, sh, ooh. Yeah, just the same as the word shoe. So the way you described it is correct, issue or eschew. Eschew. Yeah, I think it's because it's a reduced vowel, we're more likely to use an I here rather than an sound. So she eschews all discussion of politics. I think that's a word that sometimes we see more in written English, and it's not used quite as much in spoken English. But it does surprise me a little bit that the dictionary was saying the ch sound. So thank you for bringing that up, and I look forward to researching that and looking it up a little bit after class. Okay, thank you for the comments and the decorative additions to the chat. It's very colorful and nice to see. Okay, we have a question about porpoise versus purpose. Very good question. So in porpoise, we have the R sound and the or, and purpose, we have the sound. So this one actually makes a little bit of sense with the letters OR and the letters ER. What I will also bring up is that in the word poise, we have the oi diphthong. So that sounds like poise and the Z sound, poise. But in purpose and porpoise, we don't say it like the word poise. So if you know how to say poise, forget it for these two words. Instead, in porpoise, we're going to have the or, and then the poise is just going to be a very short little schwa vowel. So we have the p, and s sound. So I would rewrite that as por, pus, and the letters se say the s sound, whereas in poise they say the z sound. And then in purpose, we have just the vowel, like in purple or bird. Both of them are first syllable stress. And so I would write that with ER or UR, whatever is the easiest for you to just have that plain sound with no sliding. So diphthong or and just regular porpoise, purpose. Purpose, sorry, I'm misspelling purpose. No I in purpose. So same sounds though as in porpoise at the end. Okay, so she didn't bother the porpoise on purpose. Yeah, nice, good minimal pairs, minimal pair words. Thank you. Nice to see you here again this week, and thank you for that question. Okay. Yes, definitely eschew would be used in academic language and discussions, so makes sense. Okay, we have a question about the word beacons. So let's look at how to pronounce beacons. Letters EA follow the typical spelling pattern rule here for English, and they have the E vowel. And then because the second syllable is unstressed, letter O is just going to be a short schwa, beacons. Letter S says a Z here. It follows the plurals rule of being after a voiced sound, voiced consonant, so it says the Z sound. So I would rewrite that as beacons. And notice how I basically don't write any vowel here in the second syllable because that schwa is so short and so reduced. Cons, beacons. They were beacons of light in a dark time. Yeah, good word. Thank you. Nice to see you here. Okay. I have a question about, oh yes, whether or not people can say quarry. They can also say quarry. I don't think I do that with quarry. Quarry, it's a quarry. But people, I do definitely hear that for quarter. And that's the same patterning with the, so most people, many people don't say quarter, they just say quarter. So I'll be there in a quarter hour. All I have is 1 quarter for the 3rd quarter of the year. Very common to do that. So probably also happens in quarry versus quarry. I think that qua versus quar versus core, it's almost hard to hear if it's not there. So it looks weird if you see it as quarry and there is a name, quarry, which is maybe part of why I tend to do the w in quarry, but I think people do probably also use the quarry, and I'm sure you've heard that correctly. So thank you for bringing that up and following up on your question. That's definitely the case. Okay, we have a question about helicopter. Yes, so in helicopter, it's not pronounced as helicopter, it's helicopter, because the stress is on the hel syllable, and usually letter I, if it's unstressed in a word, often it will be the I sound. You may sometimes hear people saying this, if they have a regional accent, they might say heli, but it's much more common to think of that as being the I vowel. So we have first syllable stress. The E does have the clear vowel, like in hello. So we'll have hel, I, and then we have secondary stress on the ka syllable. So letter O does say an ah sound. And then we copter, we tend to use an unreleased T there, copter, or an unaspirated T, rather. So helica, copter. I'll write it with a D because it does sound a little bit voiced when it's unaspirated like that. So there was a helicopter crash. There's a traffic helicopter over the traffic accident. I don't know why there's so many accidents when I'm talking about helicopters, but yeah. So avoid doing an E here. Do more of an I. It's that kind of reduced, more lax vowel. Thank you. Good question. Okay. And welcome. It's nice to see you. I'm always happy to see fellow teachers using these resources. And if you have specific questions of things you'd like to see on the channel to help you with your students or to help you with your teaching, let me know. And welcome. Nice to see you this morning. Okay. We have a question about a follow-up about query. I have a query So I think query can be either query or query. I think both are correct. So one would be the ear, like in the word queer. So query or query. And both are used. So one has the ear and one has the air. If we're looking at the IPA. So that was a good query. Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, okay. And we have a question about using supposed as an adjective. So if I'm saying supposed to, then this is like an ST. He's supposed to do that. But if I'm saying the supposed leader of the free world, the supposed time as an adjective before a noun, then we change the stress and we stress on the same stress, but it adds, instead of following the rule of being an ST, supposed to, it becomes supposed, and then that becomes a Z sound with an id sound. So the IPA would be supposed. Sounds like supposed. So the supposed guilty party. Yeah, very good question. I do think I have a video about supposed to and suppose, but I'm not sure if I have supposed the adjective. So thank you for bringing that up. Okay, welcome everyone. It's nice to see so many of you here this morning. I'm happy to be continuing with our Saturday live classes, and of course we also have our Tuesday new uploads, so do check those out here on the channel. Many of the resources, everything on the channel, resources are free. I also have some extended videos, extra detailed videos and extra live classes for our channel members. So if you would like to support the channel, that's another way. Besides subscribing, you can also join as a channel member and get some bonuses and some perks. And then there are many resources on my website, speechmodification.com, including online courses. I also now have an app that will give you help and feedback and a tailored, customized plan for working on your English pronunciation and American accent. You can tell it what your goals are, and it'll give you daily practice and feedback. So check that out on speechmodification.com. That's our smart app. Okay. So we have a question about, just a comment. Thank you, you're welcome. I'm glad you were finding the answers to your questions in our videos. Okay, we have a question about collectotrichum. That I probably will have to look up for you. So I will come back after class. I use the Merriam-Webster's dictionary for medical terminology because it has a pretty extensive medical terminology, so I'll look that up for you. My guess would be so it's not collectotrichum. That's probably stressed on the tri, but I don't know off the top of my head, so I'm going to need to look that up for you. Okay, we have a question about comfortable. This is one of the most commonly challenging English words for a basic word. And what happens is that we have the word comfort. First of all, knowing what vowel sounds that you have in this word. And then when we have comfort versus comfortable, we tend to change the pronunciation. So I can do comfortable, but that sounds awkward, and most native speakers don't use 4 syllables. Instead, they tend to say comfortable. So rather than fordable, it becomes just comfortable. So we have comfortable. So kind of weird because the T and the R change places, but that's very natural and very normal for how native speakers will pronounce this word. So once you get comfortable, first syllable stress, with pronouncing it that way, you'll kind of ignore how it's spelled. And ignore the fact that it comes from comfort, because here our T jumps ahead, comfortable. I do have a video helping you practice for comfortable, showing you lots of examples of native speakers saying it, slowed down and sped up. So check that out. I'll put a link to it in the description or in the comments of this video after class, so you can go and get a little bit more detailed help for that word. Thank you for that request. Okay, we have a question. Welcome from Argentina, by the way. Okay, booking and reservation mean the same thing. Yes, so what's the difference between them? So if you're talking about the noun, our booking or our reservation, pretty much the same. The reservation kind of refers to the holding of the time, and the booking is kind of more the action of booking a reservation. So when it comes to the verbs, I can book a room, I can book a reservation. So my booking, my reservation, you can use those interchangeably. So yes, very good. Question about an iced tea versus a nice tea. So when I'm talking about a nice tea, I'm stressing on tea and iced tea. Actually, I'm stressing on ice and tea. It's kind of a compound noun. So I'll have I'd like a nice tea, please. When I'm saying that's a nice tea, that's a nice tea, I would say have a nice tea. There's not really going to be a difference necessarily. It's a really nice tea. It's a nice tea. It's a nice tea. I would say it's a nice tea. Yeah, I would say maybe a nice tea. You're more likely to do only your stress on tea. Oh, that's a nice tea, versus that's a nice tea. A little more stress on ice here. But because a nice links together and the N kind of jumps onto ice, a nice, yeah, pretty much the same. Good observation, yeah. Hopefully hearing me try to puzzle that out and repeat those a bunch of times gave you some good examples of whether or not there's a difference in listening to that. Very good, okay. Yes, comfortable, how you wrote it is a way to think of it. Yes, definitely. Okay, we have a question about the eh sound as in set and the ih as in bit. So actually the eh and the ih are not the ones that are interchangeable. It's the and the ih in unstressed words. So if I'm saying something like the word between, it really doesn't matter if I say tween or between, because I'm stressing on the tween. And so I want this to be a short reduced vowel. And so basically when we're looking at the vowel space, the I is a little higher and the is a little more central. But this whole range gets used in the unstressed syllables when it's just typically how we spell the word is what you'll see in the dictionary. So for between, they're going to write it this way. And for when it's spelled with an E or an I, they usually use the I sound, between, receive. When it's spelled with an A or an O or a U, like above or produce, these words, they're going to write it as an sound. And these are going to be less likely to go to an I, above, produce. I'm not really going to do produce, but doesn't matter too much. So those are the general times when it matters more or less. I do have a video talking about reduced vowels and being able to distinguish kind of how those tend to be in the dictionary, and just making sure that they're very short and reduced and they're somewhere in this vowel space. But between the like red and the I like big, this one is higher and this one is more open. The only time these might shift a little bit is if they're after a nasal or before a nasal sound. They might both get a little bit raised, but you want to make sure that you do make a distinction between something like beg and big. And that distinction is just the I being more closed and the being more open. Yeah, so thank you for asking for clarification, because people sometimes have difficulty distinguishing the eh like red and the ih like big, and that creates a problem in understanding an accent, and you do want to make sure that those are distinct from each other. Okay, great questions today. We'll take a few more, and it's nice to see you here. Nice to have this opportunity to interact with you. So let's see, we have a question. Yes, so iced tea is actually the correct, so we don't usually say ice, we don't usually write it as iced tea, but we say it as iced tea, iced tea, because this D is unreleased, and we tend to just lump those together. So yeah, she really likes iced tea. We don't really do iced tea or iced tea. Not much stopping of that D there. It kind of just tends to drop. Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. I'm not sure in the question if she wrote it with ice or iced. Yeah, she wrote it with ice, but we do spell it with a D typically, iced tea, as it's an adjective. This talk of iced tea is making me thirsty. Okay, we have a question about journalists sometimes, since journalist ends in S and sometimes start with S, it finds it difficult to pronounce. So if I'm doing journalists sometimes, when I speak with journalists sometimes, first of all, the journalists, sometimes journalists, we're not always being super precise with doing that T sound, the journalists. Also, as I'm saying, it's the journalists sometimes, I'm basically kind of doing one longer S here, or I can make a tiny pause, journalists sometimes. I would say think about it more like journalist sometimes. The journalist sometimes does that. There's not a big difference between the plural and the singular in this case. Context is just going to have to tell people whether or not you're doing that, that plural, because that S does run together. So I hope that helps you. Good question. Okay. We have a question about the expression just saying. What does that mean? So people use that after they've said something like, it's a little bit hard to describe. Let me think on that and get back to you next week. Just saying. Yeah, I'll have to think about exactly what the meaning of that is. Okay. When to use double letters and when to use single letters. So omission, embarrassed. Like, are you asking about whether to spell it or how to say it? So when I use double S, so like in mission, emission, the SS is going to say the SH sound. In embarrassed, it's just going to say the S sound. So the spelling has to do with the spelling has to do with the vowel sounds more. So if I have, for example, the SS is going to change what the vowel in front of it is. So like miss, it's going to have the short I vowel. So usually the spelling has to do with telling you what the vowel should say. And you could reverse engineer that to know when to use the double S's. Yeah, let me think about some rules and patterns there. So looking at what the S says, I do have a video talking about breaking down the S and the sh, the zh and the z, all of the different things that it says. And there are patterns with the spelling. It has to do with the vowel sounds and which sounds the double S represents, or the single S. Okay, we have a question about the word pour. So I say that with an or sound. So pour me some juice. I also use this one with the or sound, and this one, pour. Some people do for this one. But I think for this pour, most people pronounce it the same as this pour with the or. Yeah, good question. Okay, I think I missed one. We had the ing ending in reading, what that's pronounced with. So yeah, reading, the ing is always going to be the I sound, ing. But this is the case where it does get a little bit raised. So you might hear it almost tending towards the E, but I don't want tense. I don't want reading, ing. So if I have read, that has the E sound, reading, ing. You should hear a slight difference between those two. It's just that because the ing, the ng is high nasal in the back, it tends to raise this I sound a little bit. So for example, if I'm saying his reading, this I in his may sound slightly different than this I in reading because of the ng. So if, yeah, another example would be like written. This I sounds a little different than in ring. But I'm not saying ring, it doesn't change to an E. And also you don't need to do anything to the vowel. It should naturally raise up a little bit as you're saying that NG sound. But if you feel like the difference between written and ring, if you hear a difference, that's just the influence of that nasal sound. Very good question. And I like the detailed follow-ups today. So I know you guys really know your stuff, and I want to get those helpful details about pronunciation. So thank you for that question. Okay. We have a question about idea of and whether it has linking. Idea of, yeah. So in idea, there's actually linking within the word idea. We have the E and the sounds. And as I go from that high front E to my lax sound, iya, I'm going to just naturally link the two with a ya sound. So idea, the idea of, yeah. So if I want to be very clear, I need to break there. The idea of doing that, because the of also has a schwa, and if I say it quickly, the idea of doing that links together, and there's really kind of only one sound. So I can see why you don't hear the full idea, because people would have to make a little break. Otherwise, it's going to sound like one schwa. So the idea of, small break to make it very clear. Very good. Good observation. That would be a good one for a linking example sentence. Okay. I see. So you're following up on yeah. So usually these sion is going to be more like the zh sound, like immersion, and ssion is going to be more of a sh sound. So voiceless for the two s's and voiced for the one s, and that's a pattern that holds for some other things as well. So if you hear that it's a voiceless sound, it'll often have the ss. For s as well, like glass. Yeah, okay, good. I'm glad we cleared that up. Okay. We have a comment about people over-focusing on the concept of stress, and they're just different sounds. So stressed and unstressed sounds should be treated as completely different sounds. What do you think? Well, so technically, I think it depends on, yeah, I mean, there is definitely for the schwa, the placement is very similar. There may be slight differences for the placement, but I like to think of them actually as one sound and just think of this one as very short and this one as longer. So in a word like above, I don't like to think of those as two different sounds necessarily. I just like to think of this first as being short and reduced, and the second one being held longer. If it helps you to think of them as two distinct sounds, as long as you're making the placement correct on them, above, then that works just fine. Same thing with the the I sound. For example, begin. In begin, we have the I and the I, and this one is long and this one is short. Yeah, so you could think of those as different sounds. They're going to have the same placement. This one is just going to be very short. I can't begin to tell him about that. I think it's whatever the concept works for you. I just think when if it's taught as two separate sounds, people are trying to make different placement, and they may be holding the reduced, unstressed vowels for too long of a time. Yeah, so I really do focus on the stress. So maybe that doesn't help you understand it or do it correctly. In which case, thinking of it as different vowel sounds is also a legitimate way to think about it. Okay. Great. We have a question about the word cafeteria. So let's look at how to pronounce cafeteria. We stress here on the tear syllable. The letters ER say the ear sound. So just like my ear, you can think of it as EER or EAR. Because we are no longer stressing on cafe, the fe sound, we have the secondary stress on the a, ca. This letter E is going to be an unstressed schwa, cafetier, stress before the tear. That means that we'll have a true T there, teria with a burst of air, and then an E and an sound. So think about it as calf, tear, E, So they eat in the cafeteria at lunchtime. The cafeteria hours are limited. Yeah, good word. I don't think I have a video for that one yet, so thank you for bringing that up. Okay, we'll do a few more and then I'll need to wrap up for today. It's wonderful to have all of you here and great questions. I'm really enjoying covering these words today. Okay. A question about why did I pronounce written as written, because I was focusing on the vowels. So I should put a T there as just focusing on the sounds. So just a typo in my writing. Question about how to pronounce I'd better. Yeah, so if you can't hear the I'd clearly, that's because we're not saying I'd better. We're not releasing that D. Because the D is followed by another consonant sound, it's going to be an unreleased D. So we're going to have just kind of a long vowel. We're going to go up to make that D. Then I'm not going to let it out. I'm just going to close my lips for the B of better. I'd better. We stress on the bet, and then we have a flap here. So I'd better go, I'd better tell her, I'd better not. That's for T and D at the end when the next word starts with a consonant sound. Those are called unreleased stop sounds. And I have a number of videos talking about that. But the reason you don't hear it is because we're not really letting it out. It's there. We don't want just I better. Although people do sometimes also just say I better go when they should be saying I'd. Grammatically, they just say I better do that. So that's another thing where because the D is stopped, correct is I'd better. You'll also hear people just say I better tell you, I better not. So that's, I would say, casual speech. Yeah, good observation. Okay. Thank you so much for the support and your comments about my teaching. I'm really glad it works well for you, and I really enjoy going into the details, so I'm glad you're here with me for that. Question about confused about when to use TS and ZS. Fertilization. Yeah, so there are places where TION says the sh sound, like nation, and there's places where this tends to be more of a Z sound. I do have some videos about suffixes, so let me make note of that, and after class I'll direct you to some resources for that. And if I don't have exactly covering the details that you want, I can add that to my list to create a longer video for you going through that, because it is confusing to know. Learning what the IPA symbols are for the sounds and being able to look them up in the dictionary and then kind of group words can be helpful. So having kind of an anchor word that you know is a sh, like nation, and then others, kind of learning the exceptions and being able to think of the sounds more than how they're spelled. Reverse engineer that then. Hopefully that will help you. Okay. Let's see. The next live session will be next Saturday at the same time. I will be missing a couple of Saturdays later in September. I'm going to be doing some traveling, but be consistent for the next few weeks. And I always post, you can check on the channel page, you can see the upcoming live sessions, and I also post on the community page and remind you that we'll be having the same Saturday live class. Okay. Welcome from Honduras. It's nice to see you. How common is producing it's just as an S, like the best, it's the best, it's the best. Yeah, I would say not super common. Something to do. It's something to do. I think that because that it's is usually very short and unimportant, it will be very reduced. It's something. I think it's something to do. Something to do. I keep thinking of one started with S, so then it'll just sound like an S sound. It's the best. It's the best. Yeah. I guess that's a legitimate reduction that we do. You can think about it kind of as it's or a tiny little I vowel in there, but the word it's is going to be very quick and reduced in a lot of cases, so it may just sound like a sound by itself. Yeah, good observation. Okay. We have a question about how to pronounce opportunity. So in opportunity, we stress on tune. We have a secondary stress on ah. So the letters O are unstressed here, so they're just going to be the sound. Since the T is the stress syllable, we have a released T there. Tune, you'll actually hear the U sound, the T releasing. Opportunity, and then we flap for that T sound. So the next opportunity for me to interact with you will be next Saturday in our next live class. Okay. Okay. Question about increasing vocabulary. I just recommend reading a lot, looking up new words, trying to read things where you don't understand some of the words, listen around you to native speakers who you feel like use good vocabulary and jot down words and phrases that they're using. And I also have some videos here on the channel talking about how to practice to increase your vocabulary. It's very normal to understand more than we use. So thinking about words that when you read them or hear them, you understand what they mean, but you don't use them yet in your speech. So doing the reading and the listening can help raise your receptive vocabulary, what you understand, and then take the level of what you understand and bring that more into your expressive vocabulary, which is words that you actually use. Vocabulary building is slow, but you can really work on the receptive part with a lot of means and then kind of build up your expressive as well. Okay. Questions about starting from scratch and learning an American accent. I would say listening to a lot of American English. Here on my channel, I would go through my sounds playlist and start looking also at our words playlists. Check out on my website, speechmodification.com. We have a Sounds of English course that will walk you through every course, and also an American Accent 6-week course that's going to kind of teach you a lot of the fundamentals and building blocks that you need. Immersing yourself and listening and doing some shadowing, trying to just kind of use your ear at the same time as you're learning specific details about your accent patterns. And then I also do have an app that will give you specific feedback on how you're currently speaking and it'll walk you through very systematically how to build more of an American accent when you're speaking as well. Okay, I'm gonna need to wrap up for today. I'm sorry I'm not gonna get to everybody's questions, but please do leave your questions in a comment after class and I'll follow up with you, or you can attend as well next week and we'll be covering your questions live. Thank you for wonderful questions today, all of your supportive comments. For those of you who have subscribed, who've joined as channel members, who've purchased one of our online courses or our app, all of that really does help support the channel and allows me to continue to bring lots of great free resources to you and others here on the channel. Have a wonderful weekend, and I look forward to seeing you in Tuesday's new video dropping and next Saturday's live class. I'm Christine Dunbar from speechmodification.com. Remember, you can do it. speechmodification.com. Bye, everyone. Thanks for a wonderful class.